So this webinar is going to be recorded. You'll be able to go to appraisergenie.com. You can click on the training tab and you'll see this video. Normally I try to get this up on our website probably about an hour after the webinar, so if you need to go back and look at anything, just review it there. Alright, so there may be people kind of trickling in as we go, so I'm going to try to have everyone on mute. I generally leave everyone on mute initially when we start, just because I want to get through this, but at the end I'll hold kind of like a Q&A session. So if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them towards the end. Or if you don't have a mic, that's fine. There is a chat feature in GoToMeeting, so as I'm going through the program, if you have any questions, feel free just to enter them in the chat box. I may not see them immediately, but I'll make sure to answer everyone's questions. Alright, so we'll go ahead and get started now. Now what you see here is the Appraiser Genie MLS setup process, and we differ a little bit as far as different programs you may use compared to us, because we actually designed Appraiser Genie to analyze the entire neighborhood. So your responsibility when you use our program is you log into your MLS, you create a neighborhood subject, or a neighborhood search, excuse me, based on the subject you're going to be using with the Genie. So all you need to do is define those neighborhood boundaries. Now those boundaries can be subdivision, zip code, high school, whatever you would typically do when you're using your MLS search. That's all you do. You don't need to narrow it in the MLS by age, site, GLA, none of those criteria, because you're going to do that later on after you import your neighborhood into Genie. So what we typically do, we offer this as a free service. You can do this yourself. You have to set up a custom export on your MLS. And to answer your question, Leanne, ACI, we are finished. From what I know, the owner told me it's supposed to be within a week, but to be honest, it kind of just changes. So I don't honestly have a definitive date, but I'm as excited as you are. We've been trying to get started on ACI for a year. So we're almost there. We just need them to wrap up a few things on their end. And of course, anybody that's on our subscribers list, you guys automatically get a notification. So we're going to demo this with Total. If you're not a Total user, it's okay, because the entire process is going to be the same, except when you start the report. But once the other software is available, we'll give you a webinar with ACI, Appraiser, and ClickForms, depending on what you use. So just kind of hold tight for that. Back to this. As stated, most MLSs will allow you to create a custom export in your settings. If you don't know what export means, it just means that when you create a search, a lot of MLSs give you an option to export the data into a file that you can save on your computer. As long as your MLS lets you export a file, we can set yours up. We've done over 300 MLSs nationwide, so if you haven't had this done yet, email mls@appraisergenie.com and they'll give you more information. And as it says at the bottom, if you signed up today for the webinar but you're not a current user, I just proactively sent you guys the steps if you want to get your MLS set up later. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go to Total. As stated, we're going to demo Total today. And I'm going to show you guys what you need to have done, bare minimum, to use Appraiser Genie. So what you see here is I only have the subject information filled out up top. I actually leave all of this blank. Then I go down here to this middle section. This information you'll want to fill out. Now you don't have to have every single box filled out. Some of this stuff we don't do anything with it. But what you see here that I have completed is a general idea of what you'll want to have done yourself when you use Appraiser Genie. So try to fill this out, of course, heating, cooling, if it has a fireplace, floors, window type, exterior roof. This gets sent to buildingcosts.net, and they do use this information, so you want to have that filled out. Then that's it. You can just jump down here to page 2, and on the left-hand side you'll have this information. This has to be entered, and the reason why is we're going to transfer this row here into Appraiser Genie at a later point, because we send a lot of this stuff to buildingcosts.net to return the total replacement cost based on the subject. So just a note, please make sure your subject rating, you definitely want an accurate quality rating right here. If you misassign this, if you go Q3 when it's really a Q5 or a Q2 when it should be a Q4, your adjustments are going to be either way too high or way too low. So try to make sure that's as accurate as it can be. And that's it. I don't have anything else filled out. So as stated, bare minimum, subject column, improvement section, subject address. Alright, so to access Appraiser Genie through Total a la mode, and like I said, for you guys that have just joined, don't worry about this part if you don't use Total. We'll explain the other software when other form filling softwares are released. As stated, ACI, Appraiser, ClickForms, they're pending as of now. What we're going to do is we're going to click on the dashboard button in the top right hand corner. I already have Appraiser Genie installed, so I'm going to show you guys how to do it if you haven't done this yet. In order to have Appraiser Genie downloaded to your computer, you first have to go to Total Store and click on Launch. So we're going to do that. And within the Total Store, towards the top middle section, you'll have an icon here. It says Appraiser Genie under Partner Products, so we're going to click on this. And we're going to go down to free trial 10 uses. Anyone who's never tried Appraiser Genie, please sign up for this before you begin paying because you'll have 10 free reports on us. You will sign in with your a la mode email password. ACI is a little different, but it's not very, very different. We'll go over that once that's released. But anyway, with Total, you sign in here. Once you sign in, you'll have a little pop-up box. It's just confirming the installation, and you're done. So you can just close out of this. Okay, so you would go back and close your Total dashboard, and then all you do is relaunch it. And now you will see an icon here that says Appraiser Genie. The only difference for a new installation is it says download. You got to click on download, run the really small installation. When it's done, go back and close your dashboard, relaunch it, and then you'll be at the point I'm at. It'll say launch from now. So a very easy installation. If you get confused, please call us. We'll easily install it for you. All right, so what we do now, once you've reached this point, like I said, this is where you need to make sure all that subject information is filled out like I advised you guys earlier, and then you will go ahead and click on launch. Alright, so this should be normal to anyone who uses Total. We're going to choose the currently open report. One thing to note here is just make sure if you have more than one open, you click on the right one, and then we click OK. Now from here it should be the same no matter what you use. Okay, so as you see, Appraiser Genie will launch on its own. Whichever default web browser you have set on your computer is what it launches with. I do not recommend that you use older versions of Internet Explorer. I've had some success with Edge, as you see down here on my computer. I just don't generally recommend Internet Explorer because they just don't work as well. To be honest, I recommend Chrome, which is what we recommend as a whole, or you can use Firefox. It's up to you. Now if you're a new user, you're not going to have this email and password here. What you guys will do is you'll go down here and click on registration, and then you just sign up and it takes you back to this page and you'll enter the email and password you came up with. So I'm obviously already a user. I'm just going to click on submit and remember me. Matt, I do see you have an issue. If you have any kind of issues specifically where something doesn't transfer, that kind of thing, you can give our support line a call, which is 325-701-9012, or you can email support@appraisergenie.com. Anything related to maybe an error or your MLS template being incorrect, that sort of thing, just give them a call and they'll fix your issue. Okay guys, so this is launched now. You'll see Appraiser Genie shows here. I'm actually going to take you to what you guys see the very first time you install Appraiser Genie. because I already have this program on my computer, so it's not going to look exactly like this the very first time. We're going to use this forward and back arrow, and I'm just going to click this arrow over. And we're going to go to the defaults tab. This tab, this is what you guys will see the very first time you launch Genie, so I'm going to replicate that so it makes sense to you when you're going through the program. Okay, the only thing different is you will be taken to this page automatically. You'll have a little pop-up box, and it's your Terms of Service Agreement. You do have to read the Terms of Service Agreement, or at least scroll down to the end of the box, enter your initials, click Accept, and then you'll see exactly what I see here. So this is starting as if you're a new user. If you're not a new user, don't worry about it. You can come back to this default page yourself if you guys forgot anything. Alright, so these blue tabs at the top, they're going to indicate where you are in Genie. This page is pretty cool. There's quite a few different defaults you can set up here that will better complete your grid. There are some stuff that, of course, you guys know MLS may not provide as far as filling out the grid for you. So we've set up quite a few defaults here to help with that. So I'm going to go ahead and start at the top of the page. This is very important. Make sure you guys have the software set here that you're using. So as stated, ACI, Appraiser, ClickForms. Down the road, if that's the software you use, just click on them. And for now, we're an Alamode user, so we're going to go with Total. Okay, so these options here may or may not apply to you. Some of these were appraiser suggestions. For example, concessions. Not every area reports concessions, or you may just want to adjust for all concessions that are reported. So if you're not sure how to use this area, we put handy little blue question marks. You can click on the question mark, and it's just going to tell you what you do there. For example, concessions. Enter the maximum percentage of concessions that is customary for your area. Anything over the maximum will be automatically adjusted. So if 4% concessions is usual and customary, minus 3. So in Texas, I put 3%. That would be more customary as far as our area, in Abilene anyway. And the comp has 5%, we only adjust the difference. So 3 from 5 is 2, meaning 5% would be the percentage that's reported from your MLS. So your MLS has to give us the concessions amount. Not every single one of them does. So you may not see concessions in Genie unless it's in your MLS export. So keep that in mind. 3 is a percentage. That means percentage. This means percentage. Anything that has a percentage, do not put a range or anything. Just make sure you put the number there. So I'm going to leave it at 3% as my customary. The next one here is age variance. Now I have a 10 here, so what that's going to tell the Genie is it's going to take the subject's age, and anything that is within 10 years of the subject, any comparable properties, we won't make an age adjustment for. So whatever number you put here, basically it skips, and it will make an adjustment for anything over the 10 years age difference subject to comps. Once again, if you want to adjust for all age variance, you can leave that as a 0. We'll adjust for all age, or we'll go with that 10 and skip the 10 years. Site size variance works very similar. That's a percentage. I have 30% here, so I'm telling Genie, for site size subject to comps, don't adjust for that 30% site size variance. Anything over 30%, go ahead and give me an adjustment for. Same thing, that you may want to adjust for all site size variance, put whatever number you want there. These you generally won't change. This is the subject previous sales years prior and your comp previous sales years prior. This one may change. I think if it's an FHA, you may have to go over that, maybe 3 years, I'm not sure, but if that's applicable, you can change these numbers if needed. The next one, minimum square foot to adjust. Whatever number you put here, we're not adjusting for. So I put 100. So the first 100 square foot difference, subject to comparables, we don't adjust for. You can leave it blank, and we'll just adjust for all square foot. Put a 50, whatever you commonly use. Adjustment rounding. This was actually a request. When we make an adjustment for you guys, you can kind of choose how we round it for you. So we can go up to the next 100, the next 500, or the next 1,000. It's a dollar value. If you want pretty precise rounding, I would go with 100 or 500. 1,000 is just literally going to go up to the next 1,000. So if it's 1,208, it's just going to go all the way up to 2,000. So that may be too big. Just choose something here. I'm going to leave it on 100. I like it more precise. This here is comp export sort order. Basically, when we export the comparables you choose for the grid, you can tell the Genie how you want them in the grid. For example, when you put the comps in your own grid, if you guys normally sort them close date, earliest to oldest, or whatever the case is, you can choose close date here, sales price, adjusted sales price, anything that's in the drop-down box, and we'll order it that way for you when it's exported to the report. Of course, you can drag and drop and move them around yourself, but this is just to help you out, so we'll use close date. Okay, these are also optional. Anything that has a checkbox here, that just indicates that we can provide this information for you, but we don't have to by any means. If you would rather complete your own effective age adjustment or reconciled value, if you prefer to use your own sales comparison value or cost approach value, you simply would just uncheck this and then you would do it yourself. Same thing with these. These don't go in the adjustment grid. These are just additional calculated adjustments we can give you. So for example, in your area, if you don't really care about fence, sprinkler, wood deck, just uncheck those and we just won't give you information related to them. I'm going to leave them all checked so you can see what I mean later. Hey, this right here is the National Association of Home Builders. This percentage is actually annually updated for you, and that's just the labor/material costs of construction national average. You can right-click on this, open link in a new tab, and it's going to take you here. And of course, here's the table for the single-family price and cost breakdown. Now I think they're going to update this pretty soon again, but once they actually update this information, we just automatically receive notice of that. Alright, so right here is your MLS acronym. Now as explained earlier, we do need to create a custom export with your MLS, and we tie it to a specific MLS acronym. That way the information shows up correctly, specifically to your MLS. So GLVAR is the Greater Las Vegas area, so that would be the acronym we used. If you use MLS GLVAR, that's what we use. Interest, that's a Texas MLS. So if you use interest, all you would do is put interest here, and that way all the information shows up the way it should for this specific MLS. So that's all you do. If you use more than one MLS, then you just list all the acronyms here, and this refer later. You'll see this information later and it may make more sense then. Verification source. I'm actually going to go back to the report and we're going to go down to page 2. Alright, so data source, this is automatic. We automatically put the MLS acronym, the MLS number, days on market. So this is static. We'll always put that there for you. Underneath though you have verification source, and if we go back to Genie, you'll see I have county assessor there. So we're going to pull the county assessor for the comps, and that's what is going to go in this field automatically. If you want something other than county assessor, or you want more than one thing, you just go back here and you can have up to 3. So prefix means county assessor would show up first, whatever you put here would show up right after, and then the suffix would be the last thing. So you can have all of these transferred right here, but just remember there's only so much character space in this field, so it could cut off some information if it's a lot that's returned to us. So I generally don't put a lot there just because I don't want it to run over, but you can put up to 3. Rights, property rights. This is a default. Fee simple or leasehold are your choices. We put this here because MLS doesn't tell us that, nor does public records, but we wanted to fill out this field for you. So if you leave it on fee simple, your comps will just automatically put fee simple there just like it is in the subject. Location, same thing. If the MLS doesn't give us location rating or location factor, you can just choose something here as a default, and that's what's going to be exported back to your boxes here. And I'm sure you guys feel like that's going to change, which we put this as a default just to help you. Of course, if it's not neutral, it ends up being beneficial, industrial, for whatever reason, just change it in the report, because otherwise you're going to have to come back here and change it every single time. So I would just leave it on this, which is what's typically exported anyway. Same thing with view. All the information you see here, we just try to complete the grid as much as we can. You can change these, whatever you want us to export back. Porch and patio. So this one's blank because a lot of comparables may not have a porch or patio, and if your MLS gives us porch or patio information and we can actually pull it, this doesn't matter because we're still going to put in porch and patio info for your comps. But let's just say your MLS, which is common, doesn't even give us a field for porch and patio. You could just type something here, like so, and what we'll do is for the comps we'll put porch and patio there in this field right here. And once again, that's going to change. Not every home is going to have exactly a porch and patio, so it's really up to you whether you want to let it just export here and then erase it if needed, or set it up here. Me, I don't worry about it, I just leave it blank. Blank row 1, blank row 2, blank row 3. This refers to the bottom 3 blanks that you can actually edit yourself on your grid. For example, I like fireplace in row 1. So if you want us to pull fireplace for the subject and of course the comps straight across, then in this default blank row 1, I'm going to put fireplace there so I don't have to manually enter it anymore. We'll just pull it and put it there for you. You could have more than one thing in that top field. So let's say I wanted fireplace to go there, but I also wanted list price. Separator just means when it's exported, it's just going to show up like this. There'll be a dash and then it's going to say list price, whatever the list price is. So that's what the dash is. It's just a separator if you use more than one thing right here. I generally prefer 1 or 2 things. Once again, it will run out of space eventually, so I don't recommend you go over 2. You can put 3 here though if chosen. Same thing with blank row 2. I like upgrades in the second row. And blank row 3, I prefer pool. The reason I actually specifically put fireplace in row 1 and pool in row 3 is because later in the Genie we put fireplace always in blank row 1 and pool in blank row 3. So when you're choosing your adjustments, it'll line up perfectly if you put them in 1 and 3. That'll make sense later, so I'll go into detail later. Public records verification. Now when you're choosing the comps you want for the report, you can actually decide which you want us to. Mathematics, can you abbreviate? You mean for the blank rows 1, 2, and 3? You have to use something that's in this drop-down box. If you use something that's not in a drop-down, let's say you overwrote this and just put something there that you do yourself, we don't have a way to pull that information. So there will really be no point. You might as well at that point just come back in here and fill it yourself. I mean, it has to be in the drop-down because we're getting this from the MLS. Okay, so back to public record verification. We have 3 different sources we use to verify the information. We have our public records, the MLS, which is in the export you saved to your computer, and our peer database. Peer database doesn't report anything proprietary. All it is when you run comparables through Appraiser Genie, or your peers do, will report what the average used was. For example, for site, let's say you chose a comp that another appraiser or yourself had previously ran through the Genie. The next time you run that comp back through, we'll tell you in this little peer field what the average value used was for site. And the reason why we added that is public may not be reliable in your area, or the MLS doesn't let you export a lot of information, one of the two. So we wanted just an alternative method in case we needed to just have this information in here for your reference. So once again, nothing proprietary. Anything you can find on Zillow, anything publicly accessed will show up, and I'll show you that later. So for example, for site, let's just say for site, I know my MLS isn't the greatest, meaning the realtors don't always enter in site information, or they put something like 1 acre to 3 acres. Well, that's not going to help you out with an adjustment. So let's say your public records are good though, and you can rely on that. So if I click public here, later on when we're choosing the comparable properties for the report, you're just going to tell Genie, hey, for the site, just use public records for that. Same thing with age. MLS, I'm using Las Vegas today, but they report age in the MLS export, so I'm not really worried about public. Same thing with stories. There's actually no stories in my MLS export today, so I changed it to public. That way I didn't have to go back to the MLS and manually retrieve. One more thing, for example, ask me. What that means to you is if you feel like public's not right, MLS isn't right, and maybe peer doesn't have anything in it, you can leave it on ask me. And later on when we get there, you'll have a little pop-up box for GLA. It's going to give you the address, and it's going to tell you what each source reported. So you'll know what public said, what MLS said, what our peer said, and you can just manually choose. You might want to leave ask me for honestly, basement square footage. I purposely left it on Ask Me because I don't generally get basement square footage from public, MLS, or the peer. So you'll see what Ask Me means later. You'll have a little pop-up. So we'll go into that in a moment. Okay, this last section here, column order. Once again, this just refers to how you see the information displayed regarding the comps you want to use for your report. All this information here is going to be returned. There's quite a lot of stuff here. So if you just want to quickly pick the comps and you know maybe the GLA is important to you, the subdivision, the site, days on market, all you need to do is move this information to the top of the page, and when we get there later, you'll immediately see what you're looking for. This may not make any sense right now, but I'll refer back to this. So we'll just skip over this for now. Alright, so I made some changes. What I do now is I'm going to scroll to the top of the page, and anytime you change anything here, there's a save button to the left. We'll just click on that, and that's going to, of course, save any changes we made to this page. So make sure you click on save. Alright, so there's actually quite a few more defaults. You'll notice on the left-hand side there's additional tabs. To be honest, it's kind of extensive. I don't have time to go through every single one, but they're very straightforward. You just click on them. Comments. We fill out quite a few comments on your report. Just go through here. A lot of this we do for you, but for example, under 1004MC, we're actually going to give you a concession comment, and you'll see it down here. Now, by no means do you have to use our comments. You could actually erase this and write your own, or you can let us retrieve this information for you. Anything that's in brackets, that's information we're pulling from each report. So this concession percentage, if your MLS reports concessions, we'll pull that concession percentage, we'll pull the concession max, predominant, sale quantity. That's just live information we pull for every report. So that's why it's pretty cool to use ours, because we can fill out a lot of stuff for you. One thing to note on this page, if you want to add to these comments, there's a little quick pick menu. If you hover over it, let's say you want something regarding the 1004 and you want the exposure time. If you click on this box here, you'll notice at the very end it put in brackets. So from now on in this comment, we're going to pull the exposure time minimum. So you can add as much data as you want to these comments. You'll just need to go through here when you have time. Alright, so I'm not going to worry about the rest of these. Graphs pretty straightforward. If you need any graphs, just choose the ones you want here. All you do is click on month, quarter, or year. Let's go with quarter. And let's just say I want a histogram. That's one graph. And then you just move over, and this is 2 graphs. We'll go to quarter, and I want dollar per square foot. So I'm going to click Save because I made a change. Okay, so the page will load. Alright, so what we're going to do now is this is, we're pretty much done with defaults. So what you do now to actually start the report is there's a forward and backward arrow. We're going to click this forward arrow just all the way over until we see input. And we're going to click on input. So you can go back and forth. If you need to go back to defaults, just click on defaults, change it, save it, and then just go back to input when you're ready to start the report. Alright, so what you guys will see here now is what it will look like after you set up the defaults initially. As stated, you can go back to the defaults anytime you need to, just click this front arrow. But this is what you'll see after the very first time. You'll have your subject address up top. This information is filled in for you. Now you'll notice right here this assessor parcel, and let me scroll over just a little bit, this legal information, that's not in my report. And I will show you guys. It's blank. So if we can pull the parcel and the legal description, we'll pull it for you, and then when we export the information back, we'll fill that in here. So we try to pull as much public record information as we can to help you out. So we're going to go back over. And you just start the page, top going down. So the first thing we'll do right here, enter the effective date of the report. If you click on the down arrow, there's a calendar. We're just going to go with today. Select the form you're using. The top form here is actually single family, so if you're kind of confused 1 to 4 versus single family, it's the same thing. So we'll click on this. But there are quite a few different forms we fill out for you, both UAD and non-UAD. So we'll click this. Now you'll notice the MLS acronym is entered here, and that's because I saved them as a default. We're actually using GLVAR for this report, so I'm going to switch it to that. Include cost approach in the report. The reason there's a yes or no option here is because we actually complete cost approach for you, and we'll give you the documentation. But if it's not required that it's actually filled out in the report on page 3, you can just leave it as no and we won't complete it. Or you leave it on yes and we'll fill that out in the report as well. It's up to you and what's required. These are additional options, the REO addendum, quantitative REO, and the listing addendum. The listing addendum, if the actives are required to be on their own grid versus being placed with the solds, we just generate an addendum and put the actives on their own page. So that is something that I guess is required for some, and if that applies to you, just check it. Same thing with the REO addendum, you can check one or the other. Alright, so what you see right here, this refers to earlier. Mathematics, do you complete cost approach for a manufactured 1004C? That is a, yes. Sorry, I said that kind of weird. We do. Yes, sir. Just make sure up here you change this to 1004C manufactured. Just make sure you pay attention to which report you're using, the report form. Alright, so this section to the left, as explained earlier, you do have to log into your MLS. You simply create a neighborhood search based on whatever subject we're using. So if you were using this subject, log in there, create your neighborhood search, use the map feature, whatever you want to do. You simply save that file to a computer and actually have the file open. So down here, I'm going to show you guys what it looks like. When you save the file to the custom export we create for you, you'll notice at the top here that the column headers are in a specific order. We start with status, then we go to postal code, etc. It has to be in this order so Genie can read the file. That's why we need to create a custom export for you, because you can't just throw information in here because it has to be in R format. So once again, if you haven't done that, read the email I sent you guys earlier or email mls@appraisergenie.com and we can give you at least 3 different options as far as setting this up. So I've already done this. As you'll notice, there's about 113, I believe. Let me go down. 117. So this 117, all of these comps, they comprise of a specific subdivision or a ranch that I actually searched in the MLS, and that's the only way I narrowed it down. I didn't narrow it by anything other than that, plus I went back at least 365 days because you need to go back at least a year. So this is the neighborhood search. And what you do right here is you take that search and we want to narrow it down. We don't want all of those comps to go into the 1004C. We just want to narrow that down and get rid of any outliers because it's going to produce what we call a true comp search. Out of that true comp search, whatever amount is in that, for example, if we narrow it here and only 36 properties meet the narrowing parameters here, well then only those 36 will be in a true comp search. And out of that 36, you can choose the comps for your report. So I'm going to give you an example. The subject, I actually made a little sticky note here. What I did is I took the subject site, which was 8276, and I used this parameter here. This parameter means we're going to take the subject site size plus or minus 35%. The comps that do not meet that parameter, you can't choose them for the report. They'll stay in a neighborhood search, but they're not a true comparable. So for example, right here, the range this is going to give me, if I take 35% of 8276, that means Genie's only going to return comps that are within this parameter from 5,379 to 11,172. That is what 35% is based on. Same thing with subject. My subject's age is 2005. I put 5 years here. So Genie's only going to return comps 5 years older or 5 years newer. It's just going to give you that range. So we'll only see comparables that are from 7 years to 17. So that is all this is doing. It's just narrowing it down based on whatever percentage or number you put here. So I'm going to start with that. That's going to be pretty comparable to the subject. So I'm just going to minimize this. Anything you leave as 0, we're just going to ignore that parameter. I don't care to narrow it by GLA, so I left it as a 0. Genie will just do nothing with that. Same thing with pool, basement, all of this. Alright, so reconciliation weighting, what you're going to do here, this is a USPAT requirement. You have to score 1 through 10, 10 being most similar between the 3 methods, which is cost approach, sales comparison, and income approach. By putting a 10 here, you're just telling Genie to assign the full weight to sales comparison approach. By no means you have to put a 10 there. You could actually put an 8 and a 2. Just make sure it totals 10 in some way. Generally, most people put a 10 here. Highest and best use, you have your top use, which is residential. Below is residential here. And multifamily does display, but if this property cannot be used as multifamily, just click the down arrow. Click on the blank space and it gets rid of it. Land comp sales. Generally, most appraisers don't use this section. You'll notice there's green boxes that you can actually click on and put in your own information. Real quick, mathematics, can you filter by stories for comps? Yes, stories is right here. So if your subject has 1 story, for example, and you just want the comparables to only have 1 story, you could put an equal sign. And an equal sign is going to tell Genie you only want to return comps that are 1 story because your subject's 1 story. If you put a 1 there, then Genie is going to return up to 2 stories because it's taking your subject's count and adding to it whatever number you put here. Or you can leave it as a 0. If you know naturally they're all 1 stories in the search and your subject's 1 story, you can just leave it as a 0. It's up to you. Alright, so this area, once again, these little blue question marks, they're pretty helpful. So when you click on that, it jumps you to the top. Just scroll back down. If the appraiser has raw land sales to be reconciled, you simply enter the information manually here. Hold on 1 second, Matt. And basically what this does is if you just have like a plot of land, let's say you need to enter the address, the price, the site size, location, you just manually enter it here. This does not apply to you. Just skip over this and leave it blank because we actually give you the land value provided by the extraction or allocation method. So this may or may not apply. Same thing with this bottom section, square foot method. The green boxes means you can provide your own information. If you subscribe to Marshall and Swift, basically you just transfer their information into where you see here. Use the black headers, GLA here. If you guys don't use Marshall and Swift, then do not enter anything. Leave it blank. We actually will use buildingcost.net to fill it out for you, so you don't have to do anything here. This quality rating, don't do anything because all we did is we took the quality rating from right here on page 2. Whatever you give the subject is just going to display there because buildingcost.net uses this. Alright, so we're done with page 1. Let me go ahead and review any questions that may have been asked up until now. Someone asked for multiple regression. Should it not be more than a year, perhaps 3 years? Absolutely. You can actually go as far back as to 5 years, especially if you're focused on multiple regression analysis. It's just not a standalone product. That's kind of what I try to clarify with everyone is if you use multiple regression, great. It's still going to go into the comp search, but it's just not a standalone. So you can't technically run Genie just for multiple regression, but you can just throw everything in here and just export it, and you'll get that regression support, which that may make sense later on as we keep going. All right. Okay, so what you do after you just complete this page and go to the bottom, just scroll back to the top, and there's a button to the left that says Start New Report. Now when you click on this, this opens up your computer's file explorer because Genie's looking for an MLS export. So as stated, log into your MLS, create the neighborhood search, save it to your computer. Mine is right here. So the file I showed you guys earlier down here, that's right here. We're just going to double click on this. Now Genie is automatically going to take the site size I entered and the age parameter, and we're going to narrow down the 100 plus comps I have and kick out any of the comps that don't meet the 35% site size or the age 5 years. We also kick out anything in the meantime that's not UAD compliant. We try to make everything as compliant as possible. Mathematics, does equal apply to all filters? No. If you put an equal in stories, it only applies to stories. Does that make sense? Okay, someone else asked, is Genie working on how to import short sales to be included in the 1004MC as a distressed sale REO foreclosure? I would ask Andy about that. You can email Andy at appraisergenie.com. I believe so, but I don't want to steer you in the wrong way with that. So you can email him directly. He's the creator. He's actually the certified appraiser on staff as well. So I would get with him regarding that question. Bedrooms, same thing. If you put an equal sign in any of those fields, it's just going to return only that. So if the subject has 3 bedrooms and you put an equal sign in bedrooms, then you're telling Genie you only want to return comps that have 3 bedrooms as well. That's what the equal means. Okay, so what you'll see here, this pop-up box, all we did, as stated earlier, is we took this subject column on the left here, we just transferred it into this box here. Now the reason this pops up and you're alerted is we want you to verify this information regarding the subject. Make sure everything's accurate, of course, because this is going to apply regarding adjustments and whatnot, so it's important to make sure it's right. If anything were wrong or you needed to change anything, all you can do is put a 0 if it didn't end up having a fireplace, or if you need to change it to a 2, you can do that. For me, this home had 1 fireplace. So of course you'll make any changes. If everything looks great, just click Next at the bottom of the box. Now grading and sorting comps, what this means, in a moment, you're going to get this little pop-up box. You guys will never see this. This is just for me. When I take your MLS and I tell the Genie, hey, for GLVAR, baths half means half bath. It's literally just for mapping, so you'll never see this. Okay, so what you see here is we took the neighborhood search, we narrowed it down by the site parameter and the age, and you have a counter up top here. This counter tells you there's 39 comps on this page. So out of over 100 comparables, we narrowed it down to 39, and out of this 39 you have 26 sold, 9 active, 4 pending. So this is going to comprise of your 1004MC. So that's why you want to narrow it down. You want to kind of kick out anything that's not actually truly comparable to the subject and provide a more defined search, because we want to make your 1004MC as accurate as possible. So this is my 1004 here. Now earlier I told you guys that you can reorder the columns. You'll notice there's a ton of information here. I mean, I can scroll over for quite a while and there's a lot of info. So what I did is I knew for me, I immediately wanted to see the GLA for the comps. I immediately wanted to see the subdivision and site, days on market, and age. So this is what I'm referring to in the defaults for column order at the very bottom. Take some time, just move it around so you can see this how you want, and you'll just immediately have the information you need. We do actually order this page for you, starting at the top, going down. We start with closest proximity to the subject, then most recently sold, then least adjusted. So naturally, if you narrow it out by the parameters on page 1, and then you let us order it by, as stated, closest proximity, most recently sold, least adjusted, the best comparables should naturally be towards the top. That's actually a good point to mention. 6371, I believe that's my subject. Yeah, so of course if your subject's in at MLS export, then your subject's just going to show up here. Alright, so one thing to note too, let's just say you don't want to use our predefined ordering and you would rather order this information here based on GLA, maybe highest to lowest, lowest to highest, that sort of thing. You can click on GLA, you'll get a little load box, and then we're going to actually just reorder it now by, looks like, lowest to highest, and then you can click it again, and if you prefer highest to lowest, it will order it that way. Now of course that's going to take away the closest proximity, most recently sold, least adjusted. If you just start reordering stuff, you could even do it alphabetically. If you did that and then you decide, never mind, I want to go ahead and use their ordering, there's a button that says reset sort order, you just click on that. And as you'll see, my subject, that is risen back to the top, and now it's back in our ordering. One other thing to note, status to the very left is going to indicate as sold. You scroll down, any actives will be in A, right here. And any pendings will be directly below it. So that's how you know what kind of status it is, of course, for the property. What you're going to do from this list is you're going to choose mathematics. What does the subject button do? It just literally pops back up the subject box. So if I click on it, it just populates this up. That way you don't have to go back to total if you're trying to compare your subject again. It just shows you this here. Delete selected comps. If somehow an outlier made it into this narrowed search, let's just say you didn't use any narrowing parameters, but you notice the subdivision's in here and it shouldn't be, whatever the case is. Let's say you didn't want these addresses in this narrowed search because it's going to affect your 1004. You just click on delete selected comps, just check box the ones you don't want, and you would hit yes. And it's going to kick them out of this page here. I don't want to do that. These are comparables, so I'm going to leave it there. But that's just an example if you need to manually get rid of any of these comps here. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just grab a few. You need to grab at least 3 sold. You can go up to 15 in total. So if you just want to grab 15 just to run the analysis on them, go ahead. If not, at least grab 3. I'm just going to grab 3. I'm not going to grab the subject, obviously. And let's just grab some actives. So I'm going to scroll down, and I like this active. So that's an example. You'll just go through here and choose any comps you want for the report. Alright, so what we'll do now is there's a button to the left that says next. We're going to click on this. Now you're going to get a typing comp box. All that means is we're taking the 4 I chose, the 3 sold, the 1 active. We're going to transfer this information you see here to what we call a side-by-side page, which essentially should look like page 2 of the report, and I'll show you how that works in a moment when it loads. Alright, so this page should not look too complicated. All we did is on the left-hand side you have your subject information, just like on page 2 here. The left-hand side you have your subject information. And all that information you entered is going to be filled out for you here in these boxes. So this is already filled out because I had it in the report. Anything that's not filled out you can actually modify here. So if you end up knowing the subject had a porch, patio, deck, whatever the case is, you can type it here or just do it in the report. It's up to you. And we're going to go to the right now, and you'll notice on the right you have the first comp, 6386 Pell Pavilion. We'll just grab this horizontal bar. So this is your first comp. Second comp 7864. There's of course the third one, fourth one, and the active generally goes to the last the last position on the page. So this is active. The solds will always go in front of the active. Alright, so all this information that you see, just look straight down the page. This is all for 6351. All the information filled out is either from, as stated, MLS export, public records, or our peer database if that's in there, which may or may not apply to you, depends on your area really. And the only difference is in the middle section here, we've added the adjustment part. So you'll see a lot of numbers here. You'll see this header, it says time per month, subject site value, which just means land value, age, bath. All of these are the type of adjustments we give you. By no means do you have to use them all, but we give you quite a few different adjustments in case you want them. Either way, you get the support for every single one, whether you actually put them in the grid or not. So the way you actually choose these adjustments is very easy. For example, if you look straight over, time per month, this column here is matched pairs, that's blank. Allocations right here, that's blank. Extraction does have a value, and regression's blank. Now, you will only ever see an extraction adjustment for time per month, obviously. So if we like this time per month value, it's indicating a 0.27. All I would do is click on the box, and then we just go straight over. Actually, I didn't mean to click on that one. Okay, there we go. Let me make sure. 1 second. Okay, so what I did is I clicked on this box here, and what it does is Genie is going to automatically give you an adjustment straight across. So if you look right here, settlement date, this is your comp settlement date for 6383, and just go straight over. There's always a box. That's where your adjustment ends up. Same way, straight across the page. Here's the settlement date for this address, and then you'll have a blank box directly across, and that's where this adjustment is. So as you see, it just makes an adjustment for you, and this will be entered in the grid. Of course, active, nothing. Alright, so if you don't click on these, as stated, they won't be in the grid for you, but you'll have all the support. So for example, this is the land value. So what we're telling you right here, this $93,200, this is what we came up with provided by the allocation land value. 129.8, which is extraction land value, and then regression's kind of in its own world. It gives you a negative 14,000, and that generally happens when you don't have at least 100 sold comps in that narrowed search. I forgot the number I had, but it definitely doesn't provide accurate results unless you're in a more cookie cutter neighborhood, or you just essentially are able to grab a ton of more information, like one person had stated about going 5 years previous. That may or may not apply to you. That's just kind of a heads up I give everyone. So this is a good thing here, and the reason why is if you're ever questioned as far as why you didn't use regression, well, if it doesn't provide an accurate result, you're not going to choose it. So when you don't choose this, it's basically saying, hey, I considered regression, wasn't accurate, so I chose extraction or allocation, because remember, you're going to get support for all three. Now, if you're looking at these values and you want more information and you're thinking, okay, how did 93,000, how did we get that number? You'll notice all these tabs at the top, you can actually click on them. Once you get to this page, the analysis has been ran. So if we want site information, we'll click on land. Alright, so we'll scroll down. This middle box here is land extraction method. So we'll take all your subject information, the comps you choose. Now specifically speaking, for allocation and extraction, we use the subject and the comps you choose for the report. That's the analysis that's ran off of that. Regression and matched pairs, that's going to be based off the 43 comps, give or take, that we had after we narrowed it. So no outliers will be part of the matched pairs or regression. So that narrowed search, if you don't have at least 100 sold in there, your regression is going to be either way high or way low. So that's just a disclaimer. Alright, so what I wanted to show you guys real quick is this page down here, land allocation method. you'll have the assessor total value, assessor improvement value, and assessor land value. We pull that for the subject, and then we pull that from your county assessor or your local assessor for the comparable properties you choose. So if you ever get to this page and anything's blank as far as these two boxes, we're just telling you, hey, it's either new construction or for whatever reason your county assessor is not reporting this to us. We cannot give you an allocation adjustment if we don't have the land value and the improvement value. So if you come here and it's blank, all you have to do is type in a number, and then down here you'll have an allocation land value generated. I just point that out. I don't run into it all the time, but it honestly depends on where you guys are. Some county assessors still use index cards, so I mean it just depends. All these tabs, you're actually going to get a PDF format once we export this back. So I clicked on allocation. All of the allocation information that's entered in here, it's just going to be converted to a PDF format, so you'll have your support, which I'll show you that momentarily. All right, so we're going to go back to the adjustments now, and the way you do that is you click on side by side, and that just takes you back to the grid. So we'll click on this. Okay, so we'll go back down. Anything pink right here, that's just telling you we use public records. I purposely set my site to public records because I think Las Vegas, they don't always enter site in the MLS, so I just didn't want to have to retrieve it every time. So it's pink saying I use public. Alright, so I'm going to go and click on this allocation land value. That looks pretty accurate as far as what I've compared subject to comps, just doing my own research for this specific report. So I clicked on this box, and of course here's my comps site, which is for this address, and straight across here's my adjustment. Same thing, adjustment here. Now I have a default set. Remember guys, I told Genie to skip that first 30% site size variance, so it's only adjusting for any difference after that 30%. So it's not adjusting for a lot. They were clearly probably about 40% site size variance. Mathematics, realtors in Las Vegas typically only add what assessor documents across the board. Yeah, I think I found that out. So generally, and I answered your question about the red box. That just means I chose public. So that's actually a good example. If you're from Las Vegas and you know your guys' MLS isn't the greatest at reporting absolutely anything for site or GLA, whatever the case is, just hop on over to the defaults and just choose public, and you can kind of take care of that without having to manually enter all this information in. So that's why I do that, so I don't have to skim through it and then manually type in the value here. Because if these are blank, if you get to this page, anything that's pertinent to an adjustment, for example, let's say public didn't have site, peer didn't have site, or the MLS didn't have site, it would be blank, the box would be yellow. You have to manually retrieve that information because obviously that site is going to go into your site adjustment. So that's how you kind of take care of using the source you want in the default section. Alright, so let's just say I'm going to go down to GLA and I like the $46 per square foot allocation adjustment. I'm going to click on that as well. Of course, Genie's going to skip the first 100 square feet because I told it to. So there may or may not be an adjustment. Sorry about the pop-ups. Okay, so heating and cooling, that looks pretty straight across the board. I believe all my comps have heating and cooling. No need to click an adjustment there. Oh, see that there's one. If I click on this, what it's going to do is it's going to apply a half adjustment. For example, it'll take the 4100, it just halves it because it did have cool, it just didn't have heat. So if I click on it, it would make a half value adjustment there. Now the reason why I skipped that is I want to go down here real quick. You'll notice on the left hand side I have fireplace, I have upgrades, I have pool. And that's because earlier I showed you I prefer fireplace in row 1, pool in row 3, and this is why. If you look straight across the page, here's your fireplace. Fireplace adjustment will be there, period. It does not matter where you put it over here, it will always be right here. So if you want it to line up perfectly shred across the page, for fireplaces, you need to put it right there. Same thing with pool. Pool is always here. It's static, never moves. And pool information's down here. Now I'll click on pool because it looks like one of my comps doesn't have one. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to click on this 9600 and I'm going to go over and it's going to give you a pool adjustment. And I said that in reverse because the subject doesn't have a pool either. Alright, so as you see, I didn't click on every single one of these. Charles Garrison, is all of this data and support saved in total work file? Yes, sir. Every tab up here, all the information that I briefly went over, actually all these adjustments as well. I'll quickly go to the work file and I'll show you where we actually just put the information. ACI, Appraise It, Click Forms, a bit different. I think we make like a folder for you guys for every report, which as stated, once we get to that point, we'll make a webinar for them as well so you guys know how to use it. Okay, the only other thing I want to show you is at the very top of the comps you have a realtor button in red and a tax button in blue. If you click on realtor, if the MLS gives us the list agent, sell agent information, or remarks, we just kind of populate this here for reference. We only use public remarks right here. We don't use agent remarks. None of that. Just public goes here. Same thing with tax. You'll have tax information here. Okay, so we're done. All we're going to do now, since we've chosen the adjustments we want to use, we're going to go ahead and click Export to Report in the left-hand corner. Now you'll see this box. Don't actually do anything here because Genie should take care of this part for you. Just kind of let it sit here. You'll get a progress bar, and we're just basically transferring everything you did in Genie, and we're going to send it to your total report for you. Alright, so this little data wizard, this should pop up on its own. So try not to get click happy. If it sits there maybe 30 seconds, 10 seconds, don't worry about it. It just honestly depends on your computer. It may take a couple of seconds. As you see down here, if you follow my mouse, total, the little pop-up box for whatever reason shot down there. So just click on it. You're going to want to merge into a currently open report. Again, make sure you have the right report. Generally, you'll want to replace the data. Otherwise, what's the point in using Genie, honestly? If you have a sketch, you'll definitely want to check that. If you don't worry about it. Click on Import. Alright, so the way you know it was successful, at the bottom of the screen you'll see total is highlighted orange. That means the data was transferred. So you can actually go ahead. Did your report export correctly? We're going to click on Yes. And it just tells you can close the window. So at this point, you're already done with this specific report in Genie. Everything's already been sent to total. So we'll just close this window. And as you see, we're back in total now. All the information is in here for you. Anything that's red, that means we had partial information. So we were able to retrieve the stories, the type, but we don't know design. That just depends on if your MLS gives it to us or not. That's just one of those things. Rooms below grade, not a lot of MLSs do not tell us that. So you can, in the Genie, manually enter any rooms below grade if you know they have them, because that's just something, once again, it depends on the MLS. Alright, so fireplace is here. Of course, you have upgrades in row 2 and pool, so that's why I placed them there. Fireplace lines up nicely across the board. Same thing with pool. Okay, so we're going to go down to Market Conditions Addendum. As you see, the Market Conditions has a comment generated here. Once again, that refers to the comments and the defaults. As stated, you can use what we have here. You can build upon it. You can have us pull even more information than you want, or you can take, maybe you have a template and you want to use what you generally put. Just overwrite what we put in the comments and save your template, and then it will export whatever you want there. This one's pretty good though. It has a lot of information in it. Everything's entered in here. Check boxes are checked. We can go back to page 3. Alright, so this information, all that we actually put over here is the replacement cost new. We'll check that. Of course, we put our source, which is buildingcost.net. Whatever Q rating they determine is a Q4. They'll put an average here, or a Q2 I think is good. And then we just put the month and the year here. We don't put any verbiage because buildingcosts.net is a public source, so you could easily put that you access the information on buildingcosts.net. Now what I'm going to show you guys now is the really cool part, which is a majority of why most people love Appraiser Genie. We're going to click on the Work File tab. Now all of these PDFs that you see here, like I said earlier, it's just a PDF converted format of the tabs you saw at the top of the pages. So for example, if I click on 1004MC, we're going to take that 1004MC, we're going to provide that here. We're going to, of course, I should have clicked on that. Okay. Take the marketing time, we'll give you the days on market, demand supply, marketing time. The neighborhood search, we will complete the low-high predominant as well as the age low-high predominant. So let me go back to forms. Should be on page 1. So that's filled in, that'll be filled in. And as you see, a lot of this stuff we don't actually fill out on page 1 because there's really no way to retrieve a majority of this. Of course, we'll fill out this information we can get from public records, so that's nice. We'll get that filled out for you. Okay, so let me go back to the work file. Okay, so let's say we want more information about the allocation support. I actually know a lot about this page, so I'll kind of briefly go over this. These percentages you see here as far as site, GLA, garage, interior, exterior, total cost, these percentages come from buildingcosts.net based on the subject. So 100% makes up the total replacement cost. They say for GLA you should allocate 62% out of that 100. So what we do is we take the percentages, we gather the average dollar per square foot, which is market driven, and we just take this percentage into this value, and that tells us for GLA, for allocation, $46 per square foot. So that's what you would have seen on the side-by-side page for an allocation adjustment. That's what we would have showed you to use. Same thing with garage. We allocated 18%, so $13 per square foot for garage, and the per space, per parking space, or garage space, excuse me, is $3,848. So you would literally just go through here. Let's say you didn't make a fireplace adjustment in the Genie, but you came back to it later because it was needed or you were told to make one, whatever the case is. We take the percentage. Of course, we take the information. If you go straight across, 700. Now, this is honestly going to depend on the area. So the percentages are not generated by us for the interior. And then this information here, that strictly comes from buildingcosts.net. The exterior amenities, that's different. Buildingcosts.net does not tell us any information as far as percentage allocation for pool, porch, patio, that kind of thing. This information comes from Andy. He's the real estate appraiser. He actually did his own research regarding any adjustment support, any analysis from the Appraisal Institute, Columbia Institute, all the formulas they used. He basically allocated this here. So this right here is not buildingcosts.net. This is generally Appraiser Genie. So pool, 14%. If you go straight over here, that's why you saw $9,600 on the side-by-side page, because that's the value we arrived at. Now, honestly, there's a lot of information here. You can click on costs, scroll down, you have your cost approach value, and then you even actually have a breakdown based on the subject. We give you the material, labor, equipment, and total cost breakdown, pretty much for everything you could want. Installation, exterior, finish, all of this is in here for you. Now I'm going to show you guys how you can put it in your report. Here's an example of a graph. Now the graph, it's going to either generate a lot of data for you or it's not going to generate any. That depends on how much information you have in that narrowed search. I had about 43 comps, so this is going to be based off of that. So if I like this graph and you want to put it in the report, you just click on it, go to Insert as Page, label it whatever you want. I'm just going to put 4 quarters. Well, if I can actually type. Okay, so I just labeled it. Click OK. And I'm going to go back to Forms. And at the very bottom down here, you'll have the graph. Same thing, any PDF you can actually put in here. If it's in the report contents, it's in the report. ACI they don't have a work file. I'm sure you guys, if anyone who uses ACI is in here. So it's a little bit different. I think I have it on my computer and I can show you. I believe we just make a documents folder, and I'm pretty sure we just label it Appraiser Genie. Yeah, and then we'll put the reports by year. So I haven't ran ACI since 2016, so it's going to be the folder 2016, and then we just make a folder based on the subject, and then all the information you just saw in total is just going to be in the folder now because they don't have a work file. So it's not very much different. They'll look the exact same. All right, so that pretty much wraps it up. If anyone has time to stick around, I have one other way to show you guys. You don't actually have to inspect the property first, meaning if you don't have all the subject information filled out, but you want to go ahead and start using Genie to kind of fill out as much as we can for you, I will quickly show you an additional way. You don't launch it from Total at all. When you install Appraiser Genie, can I go over the regression tab? Sure can. It's Greek to me, so just a heads up. All right, so regression, now this you can convert to maybe a better looking PDF. It's really hard to fit a lot of this on one page, which is just how it exports, but you'll have the statistics. I don't know what NOVA means. I just know this is the formulaic calculations. The data set down here, that just tells you all the solds that went into this regression analysis. So if you understand any of this, awesome. It's not too hard from what I understand. I just, I don't know anything about this. So you can always ask Andy. You can email andy@appraisergenie.com if you have any questions regarding this as well, of course. All right, so real quick for everyone who's stuck around, which is quite a few, there's a icon. Anytime you install Appraiser Genie, no matter if you use ACI, it doesn't matter. When you install it, we make an icon on your desktop, and let's say you have not inspected the property yet, but you want to go ahead and use Genie to fill out the subject. If you double click on this, you don't launch it from Total, you just double click on the icon, click whichever software you're using. We're using a la mode, click OK. It's going to launch the exact same way it did earlier. The only difference is we're not importing anything in. We just launched it blank. So you will actually have to type in the subject. So I'm just going to use a dummy address. So I typed in the street number, street name, tab, zip code, tab, tab. Now this may delay a few seconds, but it should pull the parcel and the legal number for you. So what you're doing is you're telling Genie you want to create a new report with Genie. Because remember, you don't have a report open if you go through this route. This is just creating one. So what you would do is you'd fill out this page just like you did earlier. The only difference is when you click on Start New Report, just make sure the subject address is in here, because then we're also going to pull public records, we're going to pull MLS, and you're going to go through here and pick the comps you want just like earlier. And the only difference is you're going to actually start the report with Genie, and we're going to fill out as much of this as we can based on the MLS and public records. So most of this will be filled out. So you guys, if you want to use that, by all means, it's there. If it doesn't fit into your work routine, I don't suggest it. Plus, you're only relying on something you haven't seen yet if you use public and MLS. So it's up to you. I know we're running over a little bit since I want to let everyone in, but does anyone else have any questions? Let me unmute everyone. Okay, if anyone has questions, go ahead. Or you can go ahead and type in the chat box, whichever you guys prefer. When you state, does that create a fee? Are you asking at what point do we take a use from you? Okay, so the only point you're actually charged anything as far as usage is on the side-by-side. When you click on Export to Report, we take one use. So you can go pretty much all the way to the end of the program before we count a usage against you.
Can you use the icon, the quick link on your desktop? will that, can you import it into your auto mode report?
If you go that route, you're not going to have a report ready. That is basically saying you want Genie to start the report for you. So if you go through total, you've already inspected the subject, so you have the subject information filled out. If you go through the desktop icon, you don't even have a report open. You're just using Genie to create the report for you. Does that make sense?
Well, what happens with what happens with after you create the report in Genie? What happens with that? How do you get it into? I mean, can you save it and then bring it up when you have to put it into the report?
Right, I get what you're saying. At the very end, do you remember the pop-up that said create a new report or merge into a currently open report? Do you remember that data wizard box at
Right.
the end? Okay, you won't be able to
Yes.
choose merge into a currently open report. You'll click on create, and then it's just going to make a whole new report for you. It'll make the report.
Okay, but then are you going to be? Then you'll be charged then, correct?
Yeah, of course. Whether you go through the desktop icon or whether you go through total, when you click on export to report, either way, that's when you're charged one usage. Yes, sir.
So this is Michelin,
Okay, so you don't. So
Matt, let's do this. If you have more questions a little more extensively, let me give you a call after I get off this webinar. Is that okay with you?
sure.
Okay, I just want to make sure Misha or anyone else had time to go ahead and ask me any.
Sure.
I just wanted to ask you that when you export from the desktop and it offers you to open a new report in a la mode, can I choose my template to open it in my template, like I would merge it or something?
No, because you're actually making the report through Genie. Your only option, it will only let you choose create new report. Now, if you click on create new report, then it's just going to pop up in total like this, and then you'll see the report here just like you do now. And then you can save it or do whatever.
I see. So for me, I like to use my template, so I would just simply type the address into my template then, and then go ahead and open Genie and import all the stuff into my template. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Real quick, Charles Garrison. Okay, so of course you get the 10 free reports initially. After that, you can pay $5 per report, $45 for a 10-pack, or you can pay $100 a month, which gives you up to 85 reports monthly. And you'll go through the total store. We don't handle indie billing. Anyone else? You're welcome, Charles. All right, so for the people remaining, thank you guys so much for hanging around so long. I do apologize for going over, but this generally happens because of the fact that explaining the defaults page can take a little bit. But as stated, you can go to appraisergenie.com, click back on the training tab. You can review this webinar at any point you want. If you have questions, email info@appraisergenie.com or call 325-701-2592. Once again, if it's related to getting your MLS set up, please email mls@appraisergenie.com. Regina Sharp, let me go ahead and look at your question. That is a total question. We actually do not do anything with executive kind of signups or more of a business account. That goes through total, and they handle that. I know you can do that. We work with a lot of larger companies like TSI or Assurant, and I believe they foot the bill for most of their appraisers or whatever the situation is, but I know you can get some kind of corporate account through Total. You'll just want to call them directly. Same thing with ACI or Appraise It if you use them. Thank you, Misha. Thank you, Regina. All right, I hope I answered everyone's questions. We do offer webinars every Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 4 to 5 Central. I do get some kickback as far as the time. By any means, if anyone suggests a better time than 4 to 5 Central, please let me know. But for the most part, this seems to be the best time to get everyone in without affecting their work routine. But if you have any questions, let me know. Once again, my name is Angelia, and I'm the Sales and Support Lead. I thank you so much for letting me help you. You guys have a great day.